Folks, hello. It's me, Denny. I'm here with you for yet another Dad Season show. We're calling this episode 9 because it is, per the analytics, the ninth episode of Dad Season. Can you believe it? We've been doing this for over 2 months somehow. Time has flown by. I appreciate you subscribing on YouTube, on Spotify, finally on iTunes. The interns took a long time to get it on iTunes, but the Dad Season show is on iTunes. And I'm also obliged by my corporate overlords, I'm kidding, by myself to tell you about the Dad Season Show Patreon page, which I will put in the chat for those watching on X. We're calling it X, formerly known as Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram. I'm streaming everywhere, folks. So check that out. If you want to support the show, I hate to ask for you to subscribe to more things, because here's the thing about 21st Century Life is that it's just a series of subscriptions, right? We just continually subscribe to stuff until 47% of our income goes to subscriptions. It's just the way it is. I mean, I don't even know the price of Netflix anymore. I just subscribe. I don't know the price of Hulu. I don't want to know. I would rather not know, because it used to be okay and now it's not. Anyway, I'm asking you to subscribe to Patreon because it's fun. No, I'm kidding. It is fun. We're having dad conversations. We're having parent conversations. And honestly, I encourage all parents to jump in there. We have chat forums, videos, whatever else. Some of it's lighthearted. Some of it is definitely not lighthearted. That's kind of a warning. But anyway, check that out. The Dad Season Show Patreon. Today, as you saw in the title of this little podcast, we're going to talk about single parent season with my friend, my longtime online friend, Nathan Wells. Okay, Nathan was first, I believe, a fan of Living the Stream, which is a podcast I do with a fella named JJ Zacharyson. Sorry, JJQ Zacharyson, the eighth Esquire. And then Nathan has supported my other venture, which is called Bad Faith Times, if you'd like to check that out. So I've gotten to know Nathan well, and he really wanted to talk about his experience with being a single dad, which I don't understand how people do that. I like, as a married guy, who has 2 kids, I don't really understand how the single parent life works, but a lot of folks make it work, and I'm just thoroughly impressed, just constantly in awe of that. So Nathan will join me about 25 minutes into the show. Until then, I wanted to tell you a few things, hit on a few topics. It's kind of scattershot today, if you'll excuse me. First, I'm going to put the Patreon link in there in the chat if you guys want to support the show. I appreciate it. So I just came back from pulling silly putty out of my son's hair at school. And you just never know when that's going to happen. It's eventually going to happen. Eventually you're going to be called to school to yank silly putty out of your child's hair. You just don't really know when exactly. And that happened to me today. I got the call. And my son said, "Dad, I have silly putty stuck in my hair." And, and to his credit, he followed that up. He said, "And it's way worse than you could ever possibly imagine." And I thought, okay, well, he's just trying to prep me, trying to get in front of it, trying to make sure that I don't underestimate the problem. And I appreciate that. He's doing damage control, because, buddy, I don't understand what would compel anyone to put silly putty in their hair at any age. But he did it, and he says it's worse than you could ever imagine. Whatever. I'll be right there. Thankfully, the school's 3-4 minutes away, so I look it up. The ingredients are, you got to get baby oil, and you need a strong fine-toothed comb. Okay, so I get both of those. I head to the school, and I actually can't emphasize how stuck this putty was. and how deep and entangled it was in my son's hair. I'm talking a massive glob right in the middle, and it wouldn't move. Like I tried, I like touched it and it wouldn't budge. So I'm pouring baby oil on this thing over and over and over. I use half a bottle of baby oil that big. My son's face is soaked in baby oil. He's leaning over a sink in the nurse's office. I'm taking the comb, I'm brushing it. I'm trying not to like tear his hair out. I'm trying not to like I'm trying to help him avoid like the agony that comes with having your hair pulled constantly. And I'm not really successful because he's not, he's upset. Okay. He's upset at this point. He's trying to be a tough guy. But man, I had to yank. I had to pull. Long story short, the putty has been removed. The putty is gone. My son's scalp is very tender. But I think really what I am now is I am a silly putty uh, thought leader. So if you have any questions about silly putty, how to remove it, things of that nature, you can hit me up on the X platform, formerly known as Twitter, or wherever microblogging happens, because that's where I am. Boy, oh boy, did I not need that. I had to hustle back for the show. I said, Xavier, I need to get to the people. I need to get to the people. I'm doing Dad's season show. I got to get home. So we gotta hustle. So thankfully that has been addressed. And like I said, you knew it was going to happen as you enter parenthood. For the new dads, new parents out there, at some point your child's going to call and I have stuff stuck in my hair, mom, dad, and you're gonna have to address that. It's inevitable. Don't fight it. Okay, listen. I wanted to real quick make the very smooth transition to Starburst, because folks, the Starburst discourse is toxic as hell right now. I posted about I bought some candy for my kids since I am the Easter bunny, and I bought Starburst among some other options, and apparently they're selling Starburst packages without the lemon, without the yellow. It's just the good ones. Okay, it's just the I'm going to refer to them by color: red, pink, and orange. That's it. And there's no yellow in these packs. Now, I don't agree with this. Philosophically, on a societal level, we can't tell kids that it's okay to avoid the yellow starburst. The yellow starburst, as I posted the other day, are the price of doing business, folks. You need to get through those in order to enjoy the actual good ones. The company should not be taking out the lemons. You got to suffer in order to eventually enjoy the pink and the red and the orange. Now, where the pink and the red and the orange rank are, it's your choice. Okay, there were some orange truthers in my mentions. They kind of got beat up on. I felt sorry for them, but anyway, the pink is obviously the best. The red is fine. I wasn't expecting this. I thought people would come out of the woodwork and say, look, yellow starbursts are not the worst. And I was going to tolerate that. I was going to be okay. I was going to permit that sort of discourse in the thread, because I can see an argument for saying maybe lemon is better than orange, which is horrible, obviously. But I had people storming into the mentions, saying not only are lemon starburst not the worst starburst, they're the best. What? No. I said this is a good faith thread. We operate in good faith. We are not throwing bad faith arguments out there about lemon starburst and that they're the best. No, I reject that. I don't believe that anyone means what they say when they say the lemon starburst is the best starburst. No, absolutely not. There are limits to free speech, and that's crossing it. That's crossing a boundary. It has to be reined in. People cannot be going around saying lemon starburst are the best starburst. Honestly, I don't want to live in that country. I just don't. Where someone can say that and get away with it. They cannot get away with it. I'm fired up. I'm sweating. My armpits are sweaty now. I'm sweating on this nice shirt. Gosh darn it. God bless America. All right. Let's get into your comments first. Oh, Bob Harris is in the chat. My guy Bob Harris. He says, this is why I shaved my head. Talking about my son getting silly putty. Okay, that's not why I shaved my head, but I like to use it as an excuse going forward. Bob, here's the thing. If someone puts silly putty on your head, it's no big deal. It's gone in like a matter of seconds. Okay, so I respect that. Now, I would rather be launched into space than to shave my head, but it looks great on you. So you don't have any sort of silly putty issues to worry about. All right, we have a commenter here. We were once called to the school because our son put a bean up his nose. I mean, yes. When I say the silly putty call will come eventually when you have kids, what I mean is this. Like something crazy will happen at school and you're going to have to go fix it or find someone to fix it. A bean up the nose. That's kind of concerning. Yeah, so Cooter Doodle is in the chat. She says pink and red, way better than yellow and orange. This is acceptable speech. I think that this can stay in the chat. I'm actually looking for yellow Starburst truthers because honestly, you guys are out of here. Cooter Doodle is back in the chat. Authoritarian parent says, eat this yellow Starburst because I said so. Authoritative parent says, we shouldn't eat so many Starbursts. We should have limits, boundaries, and enforce the boundaries. This is the key to authoritative parenting. Thank you for that one. Yeah, so back to the Starburst for a second. So the the ridiculous thought that I put out there, which was kids should have to deal with the bad Starburst in order to enjoy the good Starburst. It kind of accidentally reminded me of something that I struggle with as a parent, which is trying at every turn and at any cost to shield my kids from difficult feelings. Maybe you do this too. I just recently became aware of it, like in the past year or so, maybe past 6 months, honestly. But I reflexively try to help them avoid difficult feelings, whether it's disappointment, whether it's anger, whether it's embarrassment. Okay, any of these things that we don't really like to feel as human beings, I will make every effort to make sure that they don't experience that. Now, some may say, well, that makes you a good dad. You're just looking out for your kids' feelings. And really, what's more important than that? Their feelings are above everything as a priority. And yeah, and you're right. I am a great dad. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. This whole show is about how I'm not a great dad. But here's the thing. Here's what I'm doing by shielding them from all negative feelings, or trying to, at least. Of course it fails, right? But I'm trying to. So you're shielding them, and then they don't know, or they can't experience and learn how to cope with those feelings, how to deal with those feelings, right? Because they don't have any experience, because dad or mom or whoever has stepped in front and taken the bullet and said, no, you will not feel disappointment. I'm going to make sure of it. And then one day, here's the thing, they're going to have to feel disappointment, and they won't have any idea how to deal with it. I actually, I made a few notes here about allowing kids to handle and cope with difficult emotions. It teaches them how to be more mindful of how their emotions are impacting them. Okay, so basically, it makes them aware of the emotion. Okay, because if you don't experience something, you can't handle it. Like when it actually hits you, when you have to deal with it on your own. This also allows less fear of negative emotions. So it's like it's okay to be disappointed. It happens. We all get disappointed sometimes. Daddy gets disappointed every time he makes a golf DFS lineup. Daddy gets disappointed every time he drafts zero RB. Daddy gets disappointed when he takes a late round quarterback. Sorry, JJ. These are things that we get disappointed. But then we remember, hey, the process says I was right. And that's what's most important. So there's that. And then and some other notes, the kids can become better skilled in healthy coping habits to help them with those tough emotions, and better skilled at developing healthy relationships, where if someone disappoints them or someone angers them, they can then learn how to overcome that and continue a relationship, maybe even a stronger relationship after experiencing those negative emotions. I think as parents, we're conditioned to view certain emotions, like I mentioned, anger and disappointment being among the most prominent. We're conditioned to view those emotions as uh, acceptable or unacceptable. In this case, unacceptable. So we're saying the acceptable emotions: happiness, contentment. Okay, unacceptable, everything else. And when you do that, you're setting a trap. Not only for yourself as a parent, you're setting a trap for the kids. If whether you mean to or not, if you teach them, hey, we we like these emotions and we don't like these emotions, and it's bad to experience anger and disappointment and embarrassment. And I think that the natural leap from that is to say, okay, as a kid, especially a young kid who has never really had to deal with these things, as a young kid, the leap naturally is, I have experienced these bad emotions, therefore I am bad, or I've experienced these unacceptable emotions, therefore I am unacceptable. And we don't want that, folks. We don't. We definitely don't want that. So it's just something, the yellow starburst thing. It's mostly a bit. Although, come on, let's get real, please, for the love of God. Let's get real with this nonsense about the yellow starburst being the best. And look, I know starburst are not the best candy. I get that. I enjoy them. Okay. I do remind myself that everything I enjoy is actually bad in some way. But we cannot be serious with the yellow starburst thing. Toronto Dave, my guy, is in the chat. He says, I wish my parents watched the show 30 years ago. Oh, I appreciate it, man. I wish I was streaming on the internet in 1994. That would have made me extremely special. But I appreciate that. This is triggering me, which means it's a good episode for me. Yeah. Okay, Toronto Dave. That's actually a great comment. Of course, Toronto Dave. For those of you who don't know, Toronto Dave comes into the chat and he makes uh, cogent point after cogent point until I'm begging him to stop. I'm begging him to stop because I'm afraid that the Dad Season Show audience will overturn the current government and install Toronto Dave as the host of the show. I'm scared. So Toronto Dave, stop, please. But he's right. If something really makes you mad, if a critique of your parenting style or approach makes you mad, it probably means that you need to pay attention to it. I think my reflexive nature is to get defensive. If my wife or someone else says, hey, I think this could have been handled differently, I think it could have been handled in a better way, I have many, many times over the years, unfortunately, become very defensive. And then you apologize after and you say, I'm going to be less defensive. And then you do it the exact same thing. Okay. So again, Dad Season Show is not about me being a great parent. Dad Season Show is about me being a shitty parent and trying to learn from it. But yes, Toronto Dave is onto something. If you hear something on the show where, if I'm saying it's not good to shield your children from negative emotions, and that makes you angry, well, no, it is. It is good. It actually is good. I strive to keep them from experiencing any sort of embarrassment or disappointment or anything. And that's my job as a parent. If I think if that, like he says, triggers you, I think that's worth observing. You know, I don't really meditate. I probably should, but the thought of thought observation, a thought pops into your head and you can observe it. That's pretty cool. I think that we can learn a lot from that. Of course, there's too much online content to consume to make time for that observation of thought. Okay, because articles must be read, videos must be watched, content must be consumed. We have no time to meditate when there's so much content. But if maybe if you just put down the content for a minute, maybe that would help. And I'm not talking to you. I honestly, I'm very clear. I'm talking to myself. Stop content consuming for 1 second, Denny, is what I'm saying. All right, we're gonna bring in Nathan Wells in in just a second. Toronto Dave's parents are hopefully not watching. I know like that season show is watched by millions across the globe, but probably not Toronto Dave's parents. And then finally, look, I told you we're going to jump around topics here. I'm going to bring Nathan Wells in about 3 minutes here. I wanted to address the issue of sleep because, folks, to put it as briefly as possible, I have experience with massive life-altering sleep issues. Okay, back in like 2015, I had a bout of insomnia that just wrecked me completely. Okay, it took me, I don't know, 9 months, a year to like fully, like physically and mentally recover from it. And my kid was 2 years old at the time. My first child was 2 years old, and I've thought a lot about it in the meantime. And I do think that adjusting to a parent's schedule, including going to bed early and waking up early, I think that really did throw me off. I really think that it messed with my whatever rhythms I had developed in the years and years and years before I had kids. They were thrown off, and long story short, I basically stopped sleeping. And my advice to you, if things have gotten really bad, because look, you cannot be a good parent, you can't be an effective parent uh, when you're sleep deprived. Okay, and I think you probably know that. When they're babies and they're keeping you up all night, it's really hard to be an effective parent. Uh, Later on in life, if you're still struggling with it, I do recommend you see a doctor. I saw a sleep specialist, and here's the thing that got me turned around. That made me stop the cycle and finally start to get into a regular rhythm of sleep. Right? It was to not worry about it so much, which I did. I just fretted every day about sleep. Am I going to go to sleep? How long am I going to sleep? When is it going to happen? After a good night's sleep, I would say, well, I probably can't do that again. Probably can't do a two-peat, three-peat. I can't do it. And you lose confidence. So here the two things I would say is, if you're struggling to sleep and you're tossing and turning in bed, you got to get out of bed. You have to, and it sucks. It sucks. It's the worst thing because all you want to do is lay there. All you want to do, you're desperate. You're desperate to be unconscious. Basically, at some point, you just want to not be awake anymore. Okay, but if you toss and turn in bed and you're not sleeping in bed, then you're creating a space in your bed that is full of anxiety, right? And so you lay down the next night and you remember this, right? And it's like this like psychosomatic thing. I can't remember the exact word, physio something. Anyway, you're connecting the bed to anxiety. You got to get out of bed. You got to get tired. You got to get sleepy. You got to go to bed. The other thing is, don't nap. You got to stop napping because it messes you up for the nighttime. If you want a good night's sleep, you have to get so sleepy that you have no choice but to lie down and go to sleep. Okay. The pressure, you have to, honestly, if you're really struggling with sleep, you have to build up a massive amount of pressure, what's called sleep drive, the stuff that you feel behind your eyes, right? Where you feel like you can't open them anymore. You want to get so much sleep drive going that you will lay down, and even if you're anxious, you're going to go to sleep. Okay. Those are the two keys that really help me. And I've seen some discourse about, parents having trouble to sleep, in my various searches on the X platform and on Google and other places. So just remember that. But honestly, a sleep specialist helped me a lot. So check that out. We cannot be good parents without proper sleep. This is analytics. It is. Trust me. All right. We're going to bring in Nathan Wells. Let's see if I can do this. Nathan,
Hi,
how's it
Denny.
going? How's it going,
Uh,
buddy?
I'm doing well. I'm on my lunch break right now.
Oh, hey.
Enjoying my Monday dad season as always.
Oh, there you go. I appreciate you joining the show, Nathan. I told the folks at the beginning of the show that I know you as a fan of Living the Stream early on, and then obviously a supporter of the Bad Faith Times site. You're part of the Bad Faith Times Discord. Uh, you you wanted to jump on this show, and I wanted to have you on to talk about different elements of what dad season can be, because dad season is not always obviously you and a partner and a couple kids. It can be many things. Tell the folks about a little bit about you, your experience, and some of the things, some of the takeaways that you've experienced from the single dad season life.
Yeah, the single dad season. So, there really isn't a lot of good advice on YouTube for men in general. Honestly, in my experience. Um, and so just to tell you a little bit about like my personal background. My ex-wife and I separated and got divorced in 2021.
Mhm.
And as far as co-parenting and stuff, I like to say that we're like a gold standard when it comes to those things.
Yeah,
It's not easy, but you know, it's a situation that anybody can find themselves in at any time.
yeah,
Um, and there are a few good things that I've learned over the last few years, because it's now 2024. I'm a few years into this thing, that I think could be applied to even like coupled and partnered relationships. And these things have kind of like popped up into my mind as I've watched some previous episodes. So I wanted to share a little bit about those, just like my good advice from having to fly solo. um and then just some other contextual stuff. We do like a 50-50 split, so I've got the kids every Wednesday and Thursday, and then every other weekend.
uh-huh.
And we balance things. I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Yeah.
My kids are 9 and 6, so third grade and kindergarten.
Okay.
um and it's an age where things definitely get easier because they become more independent. They can kind of entertain each other. They don't need constant supervision. They're not like trying to kill themselves by jumping off the furniture
That's Yes. That is
all the
that
time.
is a nice part of them getting older. It's true.
Yeah, and that'll be obviously, hopefully, true in your coupled parenting relationships as well. Your kids will develop a sense of self-preservation. Um, and just because you mentioned sleep, I would like to say that it's not bad being able to sleep in sometimes.
Yeah. Right.
Like,
Right. Yeah. I wanted to get into that. Yeah. Let's start there. So I think there's some guilt about among parents about like doing something like sleeping in, taking time for yourself. uh Talk about what you've learned since the divorce that has kind of helped you deal with that, and maybe things that you wish you had known, before that, and things that other folks can take away from that.
yeah, for sure. So I'm trying to think of the best way to organize all of these thoughts into something coherent here.
Yeah, I know. It's
Uh,
a lot. I get
yeah,
it.
yeah. So the first thing is, and this is probably the biggest thing, and I impress this upon pretty much any of my married friends. And the number one most difficult adjustment, honestly, was going from having like mostly like coupled friends with kids
Yeah.
to like now having like a bachelor social life half the time. It's like the world's most washed like double life. um but especially like early on, when we started doing the split, the kids would go back and forth every couple days. There was a lot of guilt about like, oh my gosh, I'm not seeing my kids every day,
Right.
and it is not a fun experience to go through.
Yeah.
um but once you get past the weird guilt, and this was also happened to be like the first time that I'd ever like lived on my own, because I had always had like roommates, or like in college or whatever, what have you. So I had to kind of like learn how to maintain the house by myself, which is
Uh-huh.
a
Yeah.
lot, as when you have kids.
Yes.
um and but also how to like enjoy my free time and make the most of it, and like kind of rebuild a social life with that is just like completely different from how things had been like
Hmm.
up to that
Hmm.
point. Um, and once you get past like the guilt, like the guilt part of it, and it definitely does help. You know, I have no worries about what's going on when my kids are over at their mom's, and
That
she feels
helps.
the
Yeah.
same way, you know. And we've talked about this between us, but like she also felt like the same type of guilt about like, oh man, I could just like go camping for 4 days and like not see my kids and like, should I feel bad about this? But what we've learned over time is that like we ultimately the kids get to do more fun stuff the way that we have it set up now because it's not subject to negotiation, right? Like if I want to take the kids to a Taylor Swift cover band concert, I don't have to ask permission. I can just take them on my day, you know?
That's cool.
Um, and then you also get the other thing that I have learned is it's just extremely, extremely valuable. And this goes into like my number one point of advice is that you do need that time to just mentally recharge and have a break. The number one hardest thing about having kids, especially when they're super young, is that you just are on the clock 24/7 and you don't get a mental break
Right.
from that feeling. Um, and so the way that I would phrase this for people who are like in coupled or partnered relationships with parenting is that you need to give your partner a break, just like
Mhm.
a full break from parenting. And this is going to be easier for some people than it is for others because there's, you know, everybody has their own unique schedules and, you know, economic variables um, about what they can and can't do with their free
Sure.
time. They can't always afford a babysitter and things like that. But you really should try to make it into like a persistent calendar thing as best you can to give your partner a break and some free time to just have to themselves.
Yes.
And because what I see is that people get stuck in this negotiation of and the example I gave you is like, oh, and you talked about this on a different stream, was like Denny wants to go play 9 holes on a Saturday afternoon. But Mrs. Carter feels some kind of way about that.
Hmm.
Just as an example, I don't know if she feels that way about golf or not, and maybe you don't want to divulge that um, on the
She's
stream.
usually fine with me playing. Yeah.
Hey, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice. See, and like that's the goal that you want to get to, right? You want to be able to have that fun time for yourself. But especially when kids are young, or if you have like two that are like still in diapers, or like it
Yeah.
can be overwhelming to take care of multiple kids at once, right? And it's something that I had to learn to do. So when this happened, the kids were 3 and 6. So like not the worst situation, but also not the best. You know,
Mhm.
three is still requires a pretty decent amount of
Yeah.
supervision, especially for
That-
a boy.
That's a baby. Yeah.
Yeah, right. A smart one that can get in trouble.
Yes. Yes.
Um,
An advanced baby, we call
yeah, but you know, I had to learn how to manage my kids as a unit. You know, because you can't just say, okay, you know, you take the older one, and I'll take the younger one, and we'll
'em.
go,
Yeah.
you know, do our thing and separate them like that. Um, you have to play zone defense pretty much is the
Mhm.
way that I call it. And this could be the same if you have 4 kids and there's 2 people or whatever. But I think it's a really important thing to develop like your confidence and your ability to like handle like all of your kids together
Yeah.
without assistance, right? And it is really daunting at first to be like, oh god, I got to make sure that I have, you know, like snacks and diaper bag and like I'm going to be out here and like
Right.
try to keep an eye on both of them. And like it is really overwhelming at first, but like I had no choice but to like learn how to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
You got to jump in the deep end, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And over time, the struggle has kind of changed a little bit to being like, well, you know, I have either 2 kids or 0 kids, but I don't get a lot of like one-on-one time with either kid. So we try to schedule that in when we can. It's a different, no, it's a different challenge. Um,
yeah.
but
If I could stop you real quick, Nathan, I actually recall early on, I think my son, my first child was like 6 months old, and my wife was going on a beach trip. Maybe he was closer to a year, but she was going on a beach trip with her sisters, and I wanted her to. But I, like you, I was like, wait, this means I have to know how to do everything. And look, I've talked about like learned helplessness and like weaponized incompetence. That was what that was, is me being like, but wait, I'm a guy. Wait a second. I'm not gonna be able to do this. I can't emphasize this enough. I'm a man. So I don't know if I can take care of a baby, and you gotta
You
get
gotta
rid of
throw it.
that
Yep.
thinking.
You gotta just like cast that to the side.
Yeah.
And your kids are fine, right? You survived the beach weekend.
They yes, he was fine. I just put a lot of effort into being there and looking things up and doing things on my own, and it turns out that being a dude doesn't mean you can't take care of a baby. I'm breaking news. I understand, but I just I just want guys to understand that. I was actually we were watching a part of one of those reality shows on Bravo, which of course is part of the NBC corporation. So I love Bravo, but uh,
Company
you know,
man.
yeah, and and there was a scene where a guy was like, okay, so he says to his wife, so you're leaving, you're going away with the girls. Who's going to take care of the kids? And me and my wife were like, wait, what? What did he say? And he was like, I'm obviously I can't do it. And I mean, I think that is Nathan. I really think that that's like a common mindset among guys.
Yeah. I mean, for all the imperfections in our pre-existing relationship, we did always split the load of parenting pretty good. Like we both did doctor's appointments, we both did conferences, we both did bedtimes. And I think that all kind of worked to our benefit as we worked towards the new life of going back and forth, because the kids weren't used to be like, oh, it's always mommy doing bedtime, and like, but now I'm at daddy's and mommy's not here.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, get in if you feel like you're ever acting as like Denny described before, like just make it a point to like just jump in there and do it. And like you can't be scared by it. It's your children.
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Um
And then honestly, it's not that hard.
it's
Like
not.
I should say it obviously being on the clock, like you said earlier, like 24 hours a day, that's hard. Okay.
Mhm.
That sort of sustained being on the clock, that's difficult to deal with. But if it's like a short time when it's just you, that's doable. I mean, I know that you have that experience. I'm sure a lot of guys watching this have that experience. Um, but isn't it's I think it's telling that I'm referring to you and me and guys as the ones who like it's okay, we can do this. Women have never questioned this. They've never said, well, can I do this? It's expected. You were born to do this. This is what you need to do.
Well, I think one of the things that I've noticed too, just because I do have a few friends, like couple friends where like I'm close with both people in the relationship, is that like there are moms who struggle with taking care of like all the kids at one time too. Like it's just as overwhelming for them. Even though like they're kind of more expected to do it, it does not make it easier
Yeah. Yeah.
to,
Yeah,
to
exactly.
handle, right?
Right.
Because you're just used to being able to tag out
Hmm.
on certain things or for
Yes.
certain times. And so it is just something that takes some getting used to.
Yeah.
So the way that I suggest doing this, because like and maybe if you guys are like watching this, you're familiar with like the negotiation for free time argument, right? Like, oh, I want to go play golf. Like, hey, like,
Maybe you
there's,
can do
oh, well,
this
like,
and I can do that. Yeah.
yeah, right. And so, if you feel like that's like something that you're uncomfortable with, I would suggest just like be really proactive about it. Say, hey, I want to take the kids on, Sunday afternoon. We'll come back at like dinner time. And I'm just gonna take them. We're gonna go to the mall. We're gonna go shopping and like ride go karts or like go to the zoo or whatever. And you just like do whatever you want. Stay home, have a bubble bath, drink a glass of wine, read a book. Like do like literally whatever you feel like doing. And we'll see you at dinner time, and
Yeah.
just approach it that way, and be proactive about it and kind of like lead the way, um because then next time that you like, like, hey, I want to go play 9 holes, they'll be like, oh, I remember that time that you like took the kids to the zoo and it was nice. um but if you try to like make it into like a regular thing on your
Yeah.
calendar, and I think one of the guys, I want to say it was Matt or maybe it was Cat Guy, in
In the
in the
Bad
Discord.
Faith Times Discord. Yeah.
Yeah, in the BFT Discord. Said that is something that they put on their calendar, and I was like, that is great. They just like have
Yeah.
like persistent set times where it's just like you just know that you will be able to be off the clock. Like Tuesday nights, I know that I'm going to be free, so like I can
Yeah.
just look at what's going on Tuesday nights and not have to worry about it. And the big benefit that you get from doing this is that when you will become more confident in your ability to like handle your kids at once, and it'll make you a better parent 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Even
Sure.
when you are doing like partner parenting and like doing all kinds of stuff together. Um,
I
so
if I could interrupt you
yeah.
for 1 second here. I talked about the book Fair Play,
Mhm.
a few episodes ago, and when you were talking, I was thinking of Fair Play because they call with the time that you're describing, Nathan, it is called in Fair Play. It's called unicorn time. Okay, because it seems like it cannot exist in real life. Unicorn time, sitting in a bubble bath, drinking natural light or whatever you're drinking. Some other fine drink like
A
that.
nice IPA, pouring it directly down the shower drain.
That's right. That's right. You know the idea. You get it.
Oh, yeah.
So that's called unicorn time because parents, especially I think moms, kind of refuse to even try it. Like okay, like obviously I'm not going to have any time to myself ever. So actually, like sitting down and squaring away a time of the week or the weekend where each person can relax and like be by themselves and recharge a little bit is really, really important for the long term. Maybe not for the short term so much, but for the long term, to be able to have that time to yourself, unicorn time. The thing is, you can create it. You can create it. I liken it to like writing a book, right? Writing a book seems so daunting because you're talking about 200,000 words or something, right? But if you take it one page at a time or one chapter at a time, it becomes a lot less daunting. Okay, this is my experience anyway. And so if you actually sit down with your partner, and whether you're with them or not, whether you're sharing custody with kids, you can actually make this happen. I promise you can. People do it all the time. You can make it happen. I think that's what you're saying here.
Yeah, it goes such a long way. And I have seen some of my friends like take me up on this and be really proactive, and they've been
Yeah.
like, "Dude, it's great."
Yes, there you
You
go.
know,
It is
like
great.
yeah, your partner will really appreciate it, and not having to have that stress, or having to have that like
Yeah.
negotiation to just like have some time to yourself. Um because then you do like, and especially if it becomes a regular thing, you mentally know like, oh, I'm on the clock. Like it's not 24/7 anymore. It's like 24/6 and then like 18 on the
Yeah.
last day. And like,
Uh-huh.
and I think when you were talking about fair play, I had said something in the chat about like one of the hard things about parenting is you just have to totally rethink how you grasp the concept of time,
Yeah.
like in
Yeah.
general, because everything is just different. Um, and doing like the 50-50 thing, there's obviously like unique challenges that come with that. Like, hey, when am I going to still mow the lawn and do the
Mhm.
laundry and all this other stuff?
Yeah.
It's not just like free time all the time when you don't have the kids. You do
Sure.
still have to do other things.
Right.
um
You're
you know
not a
to,
teenager suddenly.
to keep it moving, and
Yeah.
so but like if you get good at managing that, then you have more free time and
Sure.
you feel like you have more of a break, right?
I wanted to get
um,
into the chat real quick, Nathan,
yeah, sure.
if you don't mind.
Yeah, then we'll go on to number two.
Yeah, the folks chiming in. Diego Lopez wonders, is this divorce propaganda?
Okay, so yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, Diego. I do not want anything that I say to ever come off as being like a like red pill, like weirdo, like
Yeah.
manosphere thing. That is
Uh-huh.
pretty much all you can find on YouTube. But no, I am. If you are married, you are doing great. You do not want to be out here in these streets again. I promise. um, but
Yeah.
yeah, it is, but the reality is like, relationships change, like long-term health problems happen where even if you like don't separate, maybe all of a sudden like there is a very real shift in responsibilities of things that you have to take care of.
Yeah.
And you just like need to be mindful of the fact that it's like, you can't just like take the way that you're doing things for granted all the time.
Right. And then Matt jumped in here, says Nathan sounds makes it sound appealing. Honey, get ready to speak lawyer, buddy.
Yeah. So, and actually, and thank you, Matt, for bringing that up. And this is something that I would recommend anybody, just because it can happen to anyone at any time. Like, there's varying levels of animosity, and like, it's never fun to go through a split like
Right.
this. But like, I feel like every like divorce or like separation that happens ultimately probably should happen for one for one reason or another, right?
Sure.
Um, and so I would just encourage anybody, like, because it is like it's a gross time, like emotionally, but like one of the things that I did to like get through that is just say, okay, because we lived together for several months while we were working out the logistics of like how are we gonna do this? Like, where is she gonna live? Um, And like, that's a super not fun time when you're like cohabitating in like a pressure cooker like that. But the entire time I was just thinking like, okay, um, what can I do now that will make me happy once we're like at the next step? Like investing in like your future happiness so you can like land on your feet and keep the peace. And like one of the things I really appreciate now is like my focus on trying to do that whenever I could. My ex and I have a very good co-parenting relationship. There's not animosity when it comes to parenting and division of labor. And we're going to talk about organization as my number two thing. So we'll get to
Yeah.
that in just a second. Um, and like, I'll just use like dating as an example, just like getting back out there dating. Like, it's really nice to be like, yeah, like I can switch around the calendar and it's not going to be an argument like every time I want to like make a modification to our back and forth. And
Amazing.
like, I'm not going to have I don't have baby mama drama
Right.
as they say. Right. And like, it's hard to really like focus on those things when you're going through it. But like, you will thank yourself later if you can just like stick with it if you ever find yourself in that situation.
Yeah.
Um,
Real quick before we get to your second point here, Diego Lopez is back in the chat. He said that his wife works every Saturday, so he's like a quasi single parent on Saturdays. He said it's actually helped him learn more about parenting his kids. He says women often smile at me and treat me nicely when I have my two kids alone. Again, people don't think it's quite as special when my wife has them both while on her own. And yes, that is 100% true. I remember showing up for an event. I forget what it was. It was around Christmas, and I had the two kids, and my wife wasn't feeling well. She was at home, right? And it was like a miracle. Like it was, for a dude to come to a big event, like a family community event, with the two kids all by his lonesome, was like, how can this possibly happen? How special are you, Denny, that you brought your own kids and are taking care of your own kids without a woman in the picture? How can this be? And
yeah,
I
and
I thought this was the most ridiculous thing ever.
I thought it was too. And I had a moment like that last summer. So I had taken both of the kids to a pool party at one of our neighbor friends' houses. And there were some like other parents from like that part of the neighborhood that were there, and they're just like, "Oh, it's like so nice to see such an engaged like dad like here with both their kids." It's like I am drinking a beer like and like ignoring
Right.
the kids and talking to you, and they're just like swimming in the pool. I'm not doing anything like too special here, right? Um,
You're
but
just
it
there. You're just
yeah,
present.
yeah, but it is very true. And and like I'm a person who's always enjoyed like being a dad. It's something that I always wanted. Like I love my kids. I feel super connected with them. Like I love interacting with them and things like that.
Yeah.
And but like I feel like a lot of guys really like are like that. And it's not that big of a deal to do stuff like that.
Sure.
And like when it comes to dating, just because like when you become single again, like there's a stigma about like single moms that is different from being a stigma or different than the stigma about
Yeah.
being a single dad. It's
Right.
just it's just totally different. Um,
Yeah, Nathan, we have about 10 minutes
yep,
left.
yep,
You had
yeah.
a second point you wanted to share with the folks. Again, just to reset here, this is Dad Season Show episode 9. We're talking with Nathan Wells, my buddy, my online buddy, about the single parent season life and how that can relate to anybody's dad experience, and the lessons that Nathan has learned and that he wants to tell the folks. So Nathan, the floor is yours.
Okay. And I think I missed the very intro to the show. Did you tell everybody that I'm the Bad Faith Times Fantasy Football League inaugural champion and that I beat you in the finals?
I think I forgot that.
Okay.
Honestly, that's still under review. We're contesting that in the
Okay.
courts. It's
I
tied up in
I
the
know that I
11th
did it with
Circuit.
running backs, and I'm not proud of it, but the ends justify the means, you know.
We're not sure who won that league. Many are saying you did. I still think
Maybe
that,
someone in the chat who participated could help clarify.
look, if the commissioner does the right thing, I can still
Okay.
win.
All right. Well,
Go ahead.
we'll see how that goes. So, the number two thing is comes down to organization, because obviously there's like even whether you're coupled or you're separated, logistics of parenting are a super huge challenge, and it becomes a battleground for couples. You know, like who's responsible for what, who does laundry, who does dishes, who does this, who does that, who does bedtime, and it definitely changes when you are separated and you're doing like a co-parenting relationship, but um I came up with a system that I literally would recommend to anybody, like whether you're separated or not, of like organizing and doing the division of labor, and it's like
Uh-huh.
probably the best idea that I've ever had. So I'm super excited to share it with you all right here. So,
Yeah.
just a little background when it came to my ex and I, and I'm sure that a lot of the guys can relate to this. I was the disorganized one. Okay, this is like a lifelong struggle for me. It was nothing new. I was disorganized when I was a kid, disorganized before I got married. Still feel like I am to this day. Although I think objectively, I can really say that I'm not. Just as because it's become like a survival skill, right? Um, but you need to figure out a way of navigating this so that it doesn't become a minefield
Right.
um, uh, that affects your relationship in other ways, right? Um, and so, what I had to do as the disorganized one, this was a tough thing to do, and so I do want to give my ex credit here because she did like take me up on the suggestion. I said, when we do the split and the separation, the reality of the situation is if there's going to be like a point of failure of like the organizational process between the two of us when it comes to co-parenting, it's probably going to be me.
Yeah. I mean, it's good to be honest with yourself about
Yeah,
things.
and so I said, I have to be the person to set up the system in a way that works for me, and you are going to have to ride shotgun on that and learn how to do it. Otherwise, it's just not going to. We're going to struggle, and like we don't want to do that anymore, right? We want to leave the struggle behind.
Yeah. Yes.
Leave it back, right? And so the idea that I came up with, because and I think a lot of people probably have like an ongoing like text message thread or whatever seems to be like the meta, so to speak. Um, so the solution that I came up with is we started a family Slack, and you could do this with Slack or Discord.
Okay.
And we use that for all of our co-parenting, and it's just like a little closed environment for just us. And we added the kids to the Slack, which I'll talk about in a second because it's um it
It
that was
changes things, huh?
it was a good choice. It was a good choice. It brings me a lot of amusement to get IMs from my 9-year-old. But what I did is I set up different channels for different things because one of the things that is really easy to get lost in if you're doing like a big like running text thread is like oh, did I remember to do this? Or you just forget things or you can't like go back and reference it, right? So we set it up. We have a joint checking channel. So anything that involves like shared expenses, childcare, we split Netflix and just like a couple other things that the kids use at both places. Um, anything regarding that goes in its own channel. Anything regarding communication with school goes in its own channel. Anything involving the calendar, switching dates around and stuff goes in
Mhm.
its own channel. Anything that's like, hey, I like took the kids here and like here's some cute pictures of them in case you want to save them for whatever reason. Has its own channel, right? So we have like 5 or 6 different separate topical channels, and we have a calendar channel that spits out every day at 7 a.m. It'll say, here's which parent is in charge of the kids today. Here's anything that they have going on that's outside the normal schedule. Like, oh, we have haircuts at 3:20 tomorrow,
Yeah.
right? And so if nothing else, I can just pop open the family Slack and look in that chat and be like, oh, what do I got going on today? And as long as you're diligent about, because you can like import your Google Calendar and stuff to do this,
Yeah.
right? And so the reason that this becomes, especially when you're separated, but you can definitely do this when you are not separated. The reason this is super useful, especially for me, I'll just use the most recent example. The kids ordered yearbooks, right? So it's like, oh yeah, they were $40. You can throw $20 in the joint account or whatever for the yearbooks to like cover your half. And so I sit down and do the finances like once a week. I'll go through and make sure that I'm like caught up to date, right? Um, and then saying, oh yeah, go into the joint checking channel, scroll up, be like, oh yeah, yearbooks, that's right, and it's just right there. As soon as I open the joint checking channel, because it was like the last thing that we talked about, even though
Sure.
it was two
Sure.
weeks ago, and it's not buried in 25 other things about, we got to switch around this because of
Yeah.
grandparents want to take them to camp in the summer and things like that. It's just, oh, did I do this yet? Nope. Okay, go in there, do it, and check it off.
Yeah.
And honestly, I am so impressed just because it's been now 3 years. We've had like no overdrafts out of the like joint checking account for like surprise expenses or
Sure.
like planned expenses. We have not missed an appointment of any kind.
Man, that's
Um,
awesome.
I know, and like you can miss that stuff like
Yeah.
super easily. And
You
so
you well, you can miss it. I mean, I miss that stuff and, and I'm married. Like,
yeah,
I'm not organized at all. It's a big weak point for me, is that I'm really not organized. I don't do any the stuff you're talking about, a Google Calendar, Slack, all this stuff. I
Who
mean,
needs
please,
it?
I don't
Yeah.
I don't do it. And guess what? I need to. Like I need to get into this habit.
And I think it's also a little bit, like you said, can sometimes for guys be a little bit of a weaponized incompetence thing because you may
Mm.
have just become accustomed to, and just like some gals get accustomed to just like feeling like the entire mental workload of organizing that stuff is just on them. And so
Oh,
this is a way to also like relieve that burden as well, right? Because it's a shared organizational system. And it's just been really great and it's really easy. It's not hard. It's really not that hard to set up, but having separate discussion points for all of like the critical things,
yeah.
um, just makes it really easy to not lose track of things and not let things slip through the cracks. And it's something that I've had to work really hard on,
Yes.
to stay
It right,
organized.
it takes I'm sorry to interrupt you, but, like, it takes effort. Like, it didn't just happen one day. You didn't just wake up and say, "Hey, I'm an organized person. I'm a type A all of a sudden. I'm gonna do this and this and this to make my life more organized." Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing it was a process, and over time, you became more organized, you put the effort into it. I do think that this is part of, like, countering that sort of incompetence, that, like, learned incompetence, right? Is, like, pushing back on that by saying, I'm actually going to put forth the effort required to stop being an incompetent jerk. Like that's
Yes.
basically.
I wouldn't say jerk. I was definitely incompetent though, but I'm like a nice guy. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I think you're a jerk because you beat me in the fantasy football championship, but
Yeah.
that's just me.
Oh, so you do admit it. All right, that's perfect.
I do. I
Um,
do. Okay, you
yeah.
won.
So yeah, so that's a system that I definitely recommend. And it's like a transparent communication, it's persistent, it's there, it doesn't get lost in like a big thread. Um and it just like anytime you can head off like little battles and just like not
Yes.
let an opportunity for like resentment or annoyance to creep in is just a massive win. Right? Like because it's so
Yes.
easy
That's
to
really well said.
like to just get annoyed about stuff and internalize it. And like if you just make it simple and make it transparent and like engage in it, um then it becomes a lot easier.
That's right.
And just like watching two kids at once, like the more you do it the easier it gets. It took my ex not very much time to get used to the system, and after like a couple months she was like, dang, this is like really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you save time of like digging through threads and being like, oh, did I do this, did I not? You can just go in and check it off.
Yeah.
So um
Diego, real quick, Diego Lopez in the chat. He says, sharing a calendar has forced me to look at it first before asking a question that could be easily answered by the calendar or previous information
oh
I was
yeah,
given. Listen,
that is a big pet peeve of the ladies for
yes, it
sure.
is. It is. This is something I've learned not too long ago, Nathan, is that here's the thing. I think when you're growing up in school, you're told over and over and over again, there are no stupid questions. There are no bad questions. Okay. Questions are good. Okay. You keep asking. But I'm here to tell you at some point
Not
in
all
your
questions
life,
are good.
you learn that there are questions that are so stupid and unnecessary that you should not ask them. Questions are not good at a certain point and in certain contexts. Okay. And this is one of them. This is one of them. Okay, like it's easy to say, hey, when is the kid's appointment today? When is the doctor's appointment? Here's what you can do. What Diego is saying, what Nathan is saying, you can simply find the answer to that without asking the question. And listen, I am number one. I am the most guilty guy alive at doing what I just said.
It's
Okay,
so easy until you get used to it. It's so
it's
easy
so
to just
easy.
be like, "Oh,
Just
hey."
just remember, there are stupid questions, and you're asking them all the time. Just remember that. All right, Nathan, we're
Yes.
gonna wrap up here. Anything else
Yeah.
you want to share with the folks?
No, I just really appreciate you inviting me on to share a little bit of like single dad perspective because,
Yeah,
it's I feel like it's a little bit underrepresented and that's okay. And I hope that everybody found some of the stuff that I said useful. And I'm not on Twitter or X right now. I'm on social media sabbatical and my life is
that's
better
good.
for it. So I probably won't be going back. But if anybody wants to, Denny can put you in touch. I'll help you set up your Slack. I'll help you, do whatever. Happy to do it if you think it'll improve your life and your parenting some. But I appreciate you having me on, Denny.
Yeah, absolutely, Nathan. I appreciate you coming on. I think that you shared a lot of really good advice that dads, especially, can apply to their everyday lives. So thank you for that. And yeah, if folks want to get in touch with Nathan, You can, I don't know, private message me, email me. You know where to go. You can go to the That Dad Season Show Patreon if you want, and I can connect you there. So for Denny, that's Nathan. Thank you for joining Dad Season Show episode 9. We will see you next week, Monday at 1 o'clock Eastern for a new Dad Season Show episode. Until then, folks, it
Can't wait.
remains Dad Season.